Now on BBC News, Hard Talk asks tough questions in interviews with people who are shaping the news.
Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Stephen Sacker. After 4 decades in power in Cambodia, Hun Sen is handing over to his eldest son. Dad will remain leader of the ruling People's Party, so significant change seems unlikely for either family or country. Given years of economic growth and a key strategic position in Southeast Asia, maybe the status quo is acceptable to most Cambodians. Well, it's hard to know, given the repression of political dissent. My guest is the veteran exiled opposition leader Sam Rainsy. Has Hun Sen outwitted his enemies? Sam Rainsy, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to have you in this studio. I just wonder whether right now you are feeling very depressed. In the July election in Cambodia for the National Assembly, the ruling People's Party won 120 of the 125 seats. Was that really the final nail in the coffin of your opposition movement?
No, we continue the fight. It's an uphill battle, but I think in the end, democracy will prevail.
What makes you think that? Given the track record of the last 30, 40 years, why on earth do you still believe what you call democracy will prevail?
Because nobody is eternal. Hun Sen is 72-year-old, and many Cambodians among the young generation, they are hoping for a democratic change.
Well, yes, but the point about Hun Sen is that he's clearly getting older, but the whole point of this election is that as soon as the election were done, he told the nation that he is handing the reins of power to his son, Hun Manet, who now sits in the parliament and will be Cambodia's next prime minister.
But for the Cambodian people, this succession within the same political clan, the same family actually, is just unacceptable.
It's easy in a way for you to say that with great confidence sitting here with me in the Hard Talk studio and from your home in exile in Paris. But the reality for Cambodians is that the Hun Sen regime, if I can put it that way, because he still is the leader of the ruling party, even though he's handing over the premiership, the reality is he looks stronger today than ever.
He uses brutal force. But if you recall the last election in 2013, when the opposition was allowed to participate in, we won nearly half of the popular vote in spite of serious irregularities. Had the election been more honest, we would have won definitely. So the support of the population is still there.
No doubt there was significant support for your Cambodia National Rescue Party in that election, but a lot has happened since then, not least to you personally. Since 2015, you've been living in Paris. You are portrayed by Hun Sen and the people close to him as a man enjoying a very comfortable life, out of touch with the realities that face ordinary Cambodians today, and you also now face a whole host of legal issues, not least the fact that on several different charges you've been condemned to life in prison should you return. So it's hard to see how you can still present yourself as a credible leader of the opposition.
For opposition leaders in Cambodia, you can face only 3 possible fates. One is assassination. I escaped several assassination attempts. 2 is a jail. I have lost my freedom several times. And 3rd is exile. I'm forced into exile. But I'm just a symbol. What is important is the will of the people, especially the young generation, who have never seen any other leaders than Hun Sen for 40 years.
Yes, let's just stick with this exile idea for a minute. You do have a choice. I mean, it's a very tough choice, but you could go back to Cambodia. The fact is you would immediately be arrested and you would probably be a prisoner for a very long time. But others in the opposition movement have chosen to stay in Cambodia. In particular, I'm thinking of Kem Sokha, who has, despite years of harassment, continued to oppose Hun Sen from inside Cambodia, and to many Cambodians looks like a man of great courage, of great bravery.
I am physically prevented from going back to Cambodia. Hun Sen has banned airline companies who would carry me back to Cambodia.
So how did you feel? Because there's been tension between you and Kem Sokha. You were collaborators, in a sense, you were co-founders of the Cambodian National Rescue Party, but you seem to have parted company on several different issues. And his daughter, he has been convicted to 27 years, I believe, currently under house arrest, but his daughter has been quoted as saying, quoting him, that a leader never asks supporters to do what he isn't willing to do himself. Is that a problematic idea for you?
Not at all. I will go back to Cambodia immediately when Hun Sen stopped preventing me physically from going there. I'm ready to go, but how can I go? No airline would carry me. And if I go by land, I am prevented from entering Cambodia. Hun Sen said he will ask his soldiers to dig trenches and to fire me with machine guns, preventing me from just moving into Cambodia. So how can I do?
You've just made a whole series of extremely serious allegations directed at Hun Sen. Of course, he's not here to refute them, and what the Cambodian government has always said is that you have been accorded due legal process and you have been convicted in Cambodia's courts. It's almost impossible to be an active opponent of Hun Sen and his associates inside Cambodia today. There are many political prisoners. Street protest is virtually impossible. Dissenting voices in newspapers have been closed down. So I appreciate it is very difficult. Nonetheless, you seem to have achieved something which is sort of extremely problematic for the opposition. You've split the opposition. There are many opponents of Hun Sen inside Cambodia who now find you to be problematic.
I think this is a small group of people who do not represent the general population. The general population continue to vote for another opposition party. We collect, in spite of the very little time left to prepare the last commune election, we collected nearly 1/4 of the popular vote. And for this year election, we were prevented from running because Hun Sen knew that the trend is very strong in favor of the opposition that I represent.
Well, but why is it then that the leader of the Candlelight Party, which since your party was dissolved, the Candlelight Party took on the mantle as the main opposition party in Cambodia, and its veteran leader Kong Korm has made a point of saying, we have nothing to do with Sam Rainsy and we want nothing to do with him. Why has that happened?
This is because Hun Sen is paranoid. The previous name of the Candlelight Party was the Sam Rainsy Party. I founded that party. But Hun Sen would destroy anything which is related to me. So you can understand why the current leadership of the Candlelight Party want to distantiate themselves from me, otherwise they will be dissolved or they will be put in jail.
Yeah, I mean, you've chosen again to point your fire, you've targeted Hun Sen in that answer. I'm asking you why senior figures in the Cambodian opposition, including Kongkorn, don't want to be associated with you. And it seems the answer is, which you didn't want to give me, but it seems the answer is that they want to distance themselves from a lot of your political rhetoric, which they find inflammatory, and some of it even racist, nationalist, xenophobic and racist.
I think it is out of fear. Hun Sen has the National Assembly.
No, but forgive me, you've made many allegations about Hun Sen. I'm now not actually talking about Hun Sen. I'm asking you to account for your own language over many years, going back a decade. There are many examples of you using inflammatory, racially charged rhetoric, particularly directed at the small ethnic Vietnamese population inside Cambodia. And some of your fellow opponents of Hun Sen do not like your language.
It is not for this reason. It is out of fear that they want to distantiate themselves from me. I was invited to Vietnam. I was received by the Deputy Prime Minister, by the Foreign Affairs Minister, meaning that they consider me as representative of the Cambodian people, and they respect me, receiving me as an official guest.
So have you stopped using a word? I'm not going to use a word, but you for years used a word to describe Vietnamese people in Cambodia, which is regarded widely as a slur, as derogatory. Have you stopped using that word?
No, it is a matter of, it's a controversy. People who are native Cambodian, who speak Cambodian or Khmer naturally, they don't consider any word that we use currently in Cambodia as derogatory.
You're not going to apologise for your use of language. Are you going to apologise for saying things like this? Now, this was 9 years ago, but I don't know if you still believe it today. You said of the Hun Sen leadership, you said that leadership is destroying our country, murdering it bit by bit, and they are giving and then you used this racial derogatory word, which I'm not going to use, they are giving the Vietnamese, you meant, the chance to kill Cambodia. Do you apologise now for saying that?
No, I didn't say that it is a bad translation. I said that Cambodia has lost territory to neighboring countries. For instance, the island called Koh Troll, we lost that because Hun Sen signed a treaty giving that island belonging to Cambodia to a neighboring country. So I have nothing to apologize because this is the truth.
Well, there are many human rights workers who worry that you've stirred up racism. To quote Phil Robertson, who did work for Human Rights Watch in Asia, when you were saying some of this stuff, he said racism is a problem that encompasses not only Rains's party but also other parties as well. It is an ongoing problem, and the way you were using the language, he said, it could mean it bursts out into larger violence. So I just wonder whether you've got any regrets about the way you used this xenophobic nationalist tone.
No, not at all. For instance, the spokesperson for the government used the same term. So it means that it is a common language, whether you are in the opposition or in the government.
Do you think nationalism is a vehicle you can use to erode support for Hun Sen and now Hun Manet?
We don't need nationalism. There are enough serious problems facing the Cambodian people, which is poverty, which is corruption, which is social injustice, which is deforestation, which is a modern form of slavery. So these issues are real big concerns that we have to address.
Yeah, well, on that score, look at the data. Over 2 decades, Cambodia, led by Hun Sen, has delivered average growth rates of something around 7%. He has lifted Cambodians out of poverty. He has improved education rates, infant mortality rates. He's improved longevity of life in Cambodia. On so many different measures of quality of life, over the last 2 decades, Cambodians have experienced very positive developments.
The contrary would have been surprising, because Cambodia came from a very low level. After the destructions caused by war, by massacre, Cambodia was virtually reduced to ashes. So when you come from a near zero level, the progress can be only noticeable. But 6-7% per year is not extraordinary. It is in line with the growth enjoyed by neighboring countries. But more importantly, you have to look at the quality of the growth. You have to see whether this growth has been sustainable and equitable. They have not been sustainable and equitable, because Cambodia has suffered from the highest deforestation rates in the world. And with the social fabric tearing down because of human trafficking, prostitution, how can that kind of growth be sustainable? And
what one can say is that the international community has deepened its trading relationships with Cambodia. Cambodia is now seen as a low-cost manufacturer to the world.
Yes, fortunately.
Did you say fortunately?
No, fortunately that the international community continue to help Cambodia.
You approve of that?
Yes, to help the Cambodian people.
But of course what they're also doing is, in a sense, helping Hun Sen and his colleagues stay in power.
Because Hun Sen holds the Cambodian people as hostage. He blackmailed the international community. They must help the Cambodian people through him, but helping the Cambodian people through Hun Sen.
See, you've been sitting in Paris delivering that message, saying that, you know, the international community has to get real and wake up to what is happening inside Cambodia and start putting real pressure on Hun Sen. You've been saying it for such a long time and nothing is happening. Look at his record in ASEAN. He's now been fully embraced into the regional group. I think he's chaired the ASEAN summit 3 times. Look at his relationship with, for example, Emmanuel Macron. Despite the fact that the EU in 2020 did put some limited trade sanctions on Cambodia, not so very long ago Hun Sen was crowing about the warmth of his relationship with Macron. The two of them, I think, were pictured holding hands together.
But look at what the human rights organizations, such as Human Rights Watch, have said about the human rights violation committed by Hun Sen. What I am asking for is personal sanctions, targeted sanctions against individuals, those responsible for serious human rights violation and for the destruction of democracy in Cambodia.
Are you not prepared to give Hun Manet, son of Hun Sen, a chance?
I think Hun Manet is a prisoner of the system. Remember what happened to Syria in 2000 when Hafez al-Assad was replaced by his son, more educated and more open, presumably. People expect that, there will be an improvement of the regime. Not at all.
I mean, the Americans are certainly hoping that, because they're very aware that he was educated in part at the military academy at West Point. He also was educated in part in the United Kingdom. What the West sees in Hun Manet, I think, is the possibility of a leader who is more open than his father.
This is exactly what the West expected from Bashar al-Assad. Actually, the son is worse than the father, because the regime remained the same. Actually, the son is a prisoner of the system set up by the father This is true in Syria as well as in Cambodia.
Well, whether or not that message is getting through in capitals like Washington and London, it certainly doesn't seem to be cutting any ice in the capital that arguably matters most when it comes to diplomacy, and that is Beijing. Because Beijing has, it seems, an ironclad alliance with Hun Sen and the current Cambodian government. Nothing you say or do is going to change that, is it?
Because the strategic alliance between Hun Sen and Beijing is crucial to Hun Sen, is existential to Hun Sen. And for China, China has decided to make Cambodia a military stronghold, an outpost for China in her expansionist policy.
China is building a port in Cambodia, which many people believe ultimately could be used by the Chinese Navy.
Yes, it is why the West must accept the fact that Hun Sen and Hun Manet will depend on China for their very survival. Actually, Hun Sen is very admirative of the Chinese model of government, of their sophisticated means to control the population.
So, Mr. Rainsy, you have a strategic choice to make of your own, because you obviously hope that you are still speaking to the Cambodian people, getting your message across to the Cambodian people. So what is your message to them today in terms of the geopolitical rivalry between the United States and China, which is so important to your neighborhood in Southeast Asia? Are you telling the Cambodian people that if you were in power, you would be making a fundamental shift and aligning Cambodia much more with the United States and Western interests than with Beijing? Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all. I call on the international community, especially the 17 countries who signed the Paris Peace Agreement 1991 to implement that treaty. That international treaty mandates Cambodia to be a neutral and independent country.
And to be honest, that ship has sailed, Mr. Rainsy. I mean, that's more than 30 years ago. Do you seriously think that the international community, perhaps you think the United States in the lead, is going to go out of its way, given all of the problems in the world today, to make a big effort to go back to that treaty?
Of course. The last statement by the French government recalls the Paris Peace Agreement because it is very important for Cambodia to stick to democratic principles and for Cambodia to remain a neutral and independent country, not to allow any foreign power to build military bases on her soil.
So your message is you still want to believe that the 1991 peace accord can be implemented some 30-something years later. But in the meantime, what are you going to do now? You sit there in Paris. You've told me you absolutely can't go home. There is no room for maneuver for any opposition group in today's Cambodia. What can you really offer the Cambodian people?
This can change any time. A political leader in Cambodia like former King Norodom Sihanouk, he was in exile for many years. Hun Sen himself, he had to flee the country to escape massacre from the Khmer Rouge. So what I call for is a free and fair election. Let the Cambodian people decide. Not Hun Sen, not Sam Rainsy, but the Cambodian people decide through real elections.
Do you believe that there ever could be a popular uprising, some sort of street movement that was capable of bringing down the current regime?
I don't call for that. I just call for peaceful democratic process, meaning free and fair election. And this is, according to the Paris Peace Agreement, this must be organized with the support of the international community. If you stop respecting an international treaty, where are we going to? What is the use of signing any international treaty if you don't respect them?
Sam Rainsy, I thank you very much for joining me on Hard Talk. Thank you.
Thank you.